Hello and welcome to this online training module developed by Community Wisdom Partners. My name is Katinka van Kranenburg and I will be your trainer of today. Today's training is titled Operating in Fragile States: Business, Security and Peace. At the end of this training module, you will have understanding of the potential linkages between your business and society when operating in fragile states, the do's and don'ts around security, and the potentials for contributing to peace.
Whether you like it or not, in times of war and vulnerable peace, your company plays a role, so better be prepared.
Preventing armed conflict, ending it if it breaks out, and building peace in its aftermath continue to pose enormous challenges for entire societies and the international community. The classical theory is that development requires the rule of law, so that people can depend upon a minimum set of rights and regulations and are willing to take the risk to invest in the economy. But clearly, business investments are not sufficient to guarantee peace. Only if done responsibly, business is a driver of peace. If business is done irresponsibly, it can foster polarization and even be a reason for conflict. Whilst this training is titled Operating in Fragile States, you can also refer to the content as doing business in conflict-affected settings or volatile areas. Just remember that this training refers to operations when the conflict is manifest or violent, as well as when latent, meaning still underlying. Now, what are the main aspects of doing business in fragile states? Businesses have an extra responsibility to ensure their operations and the products and services they provide do not negatively impact society. The first part of this training, therefore, gives insight into conflict-sensitive business practices. In the unfortunate case that conflict does break out, a company's first concern is security. Dealing with security forces is the second key element of this training. And when security is guaranteed in times of conflict, the company reviews to what level it can continue to operate as usual. Are regular operational and logistical problems such as water and electricity or staffing resolved? Are suppliers still operating and are consumers still consuming? If so, then we can look into peace-building initiatives, the third part of this training. Note that there is no legal requirement when operating in fragile states to make an explicit commitment to peace-building. However, as there are business benefits involved, we will look into the provision of humanitarian aid and in-kind support. When properly implemented, the business benefits of all this are obvious. Remaining in operations during conflict and in times of insecurity ensures the company has a competitive advantage to those who leave as well as to newcomers on the market. Now, let's start with part 1, conflict-sensitive business practices. As a manager, you can increase your skills in terms of conflict sensitivity. This implies you understand the context in which you are working and the interaction between your company's interventions and that context. Following, you will be in a position to act upon that understanding by mitigating negative impacts and promoting positive impacts. When discussing conflict-sensitive business practices, you have to review two sides of your business. First, the business actions. So what products and services do you offer? Through which channels are they sold? And who buys them? And second, the behaviors of those working in or with your business. Whilst you may feel your products or services are not contributing to conflict, as you are not selling weapons or sheltering soldiers, it may be that your business is or could become related in other ways. Let's see if you recognize some of our examples.
The government has asked for an employee overview indicating which clan each employee belongs to.
To deliver our products, we have to drive through rebel territory.
Our security company has been accused of hiring people from only one of the tribes.
The government has prohibited artisanal mining 5 years ago. Now communities are angry with just anything that has to do with mining.
Our supplier also supplies the armed forces.
The government owns a majority of our shares, and now they have been accused of human rights violations.
One day we pay taxes to the democratic elected government, and the next day we find the tax office is taken over by a rebel group.
Our employees are in danger when commuting.
To get into the topic, let us look at the case of beer brewer Heineken that brews and sells drinks in Central Africa, a region with many conflicts and a complexity of issues within and between the countries of Rwanda, Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Heineken transports its beers and soft drinks by means of trucks and boats. It protects its people and assets by hiring security staff. Now in 2013, a European multi-stakeholder study demonstrated how Heineken's subsidiary struggled operating in times of armed conflict as well as during the ceasefire and relative peace. The report discusses the company's interaction with 3 different types of what are called commercial conflict-dependent actors, meaning people who have a commercial interest in maintaining the conflict. The study claims that Heineken's subsidiary is complicit with rebel groups as it makes illicit payments to rebels to pass roadblocks. Also, it challenges Heineken's use of private security companies and engagement with Congolese state security forces, both the police and the army. Now let us make a rough scan and see whether the company's activities and behaviors are conflict sensitive. First, we look into the core business. Is the work and behavior of Heineken connecting or dividing actors in society? Think of dividing as actions or behaviors that lead to tension, suspicion, mistrust, or divisions that lead to conflict or violence between groups of people. Connectors, on the other hand, can bring trust, interdependence, and equality between people. In the case of Heineken in Central Africa, one would have to understand the contextual issues, such as ethnicity, geography, power, infrastructure, economic dependency, leadership, politics, but also gender and community concerns to make a proper analysis. But in absence of such a study, let's make some presumptions related to Heineken's operations and its products. Beer can bring enjoyment between people, but misuse of beer can lead to people doing things they would normally not do when sober. Transportation of beers and soft drinks through rebel areas means the company indirectly supports rebels when paying illicit roadblock or toll fees. Hiring security agencies that have a stance in the conflict, participate or have participated in one side of the conflict actors, can be a divider. Now the company also has to work with the authorities. How does that impact in terms of connecting or dividing society? And then again, the number of people employed through the company and its supply chain is valuable, particularly in times of conflict. Now, besides the company operations and the products or services, we have to also look into the behaviors of the managers and the staff members. What are these people doing and how are they behaving? Are they impacting dividers or connectors, or are they associated with a certain movement that is involved in the conflict? We cannot tell from this case study how Heineken managers interacted with rebels and governments, how they selected their security agencies, and what payments they had to make to deliver their beers to the bars or the supermarkets. The report mentions rebel payments by Heineken. Although this can easily be regarded as wrong, more context and definitions are needed here. However, there are limits to rebel payments. Paying terror organizations that are on the International Terror Organizations list is clearly one of them. This case illustrates that in times of military rule or areas controlled by rebel groups, responsible business practices to any meaningful extent is difficult. Some argue that investments in such situations are impossible without being perceived to be legitimizing one of the conflict parties. However, I believe it's not realistic to expect a company like Heineken to start and stop working in fragile areas as if they were a flashing light. Accepting a certain level of interaction and probably also complicity in times of conflict seems inevitable. But there are various well-proven ways for companies to demonstrate conflict sensitivity, prevent reinforcing the dividers, and actually contribute to peace by positively impacting the connectors. Now, what could Heineken have done better? A proper conflict-sensitive analysis and impact assessment is required to assess the level of conflict sensitivity of Heineken. Following, a strategic approach based upon that conflict sensitivity is needed. The benefits would not only be visual on the ground, but a proactive approach can also help responding to external research, such as the study published about Heineken in Central Africa. Now let's turn to the second part of the training, that of security. When operating in fragile states, security of employees and their families, whether it's expatriates or local staff, need to be ensured to avoid casualties and fatalities. Then, the premises and materials of the company are at stake. How to protect the plant from being damaged or looted, and how to ensure that company vehicles are not confiscated and land is not seized. Ideally, the company's security stems from the fact that their surrounding communities are happy with the company and do not even consider being a threat. However, in practice, companies hire private security companies or are forced by the government to hire public security. For Heineken, the presence of security was needed, but it was also bothering as it came with additional responsibilities. So what could Heineken have done different in relation to their security? Several aspects are of importance. First, how to select a private security company. Price is important, but other criteria may be even more important. Second, what due diligence is done to verify the security company selected is trustworthy and has a good track record. Third, what human rights trainings do the security officers receive? And fourth, how are grievances registered? And last, what efforts exist to prevent future trouble? Besides training, great international guidelines and even listings of trustworthy security companies are available for businesses operating in fragile states. Do note that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Therefore, we must focus on implementing the policies and processes in the field. We have discussed conflict-sensitive business practices in terms of the impact on connectors and dividers. We also highlighted the role of security forces. Now stop the video and make notes of these questions which we want to discuss with you in class. Feel free to mail me at any time to ask questions, share thoughts, get feedback, support, etc. Thank you and have a good day.